Welcome everyone to our class today. You're going to learn what natives say at work, and we'll look at very different situations as well. So let's start with in-person meetings. When was the last in-person meeting you attended? And we'll also talk about online meetings like we're doing right now, but this is in person. So you're physically in the room with the other people. And hello to all my students. Hello. Okay, so what can you say? You can say, can I jump in for a second? Can I jump in for a second? So you're asking this as a question, and we have our phrasal verb to jump in. Jump in. Notice that connection because we take that P and we connect it. Can I jump in? Can I jump in? Jump in. Can I jump in for a second? So, for a second just means a brief amount of time. A native speaker might say for a sec, and shorten second to sec, or for a minute. So let's repeat after me. Can I jump in for a second? So you can use this right before you want to share a point, and maybe it's as someone else is talking. How about this? I just want to add to that last point before we move on. Okay, so if the conversation is going to change, you might use this. I just want to add to that last point. Now, maybe again, you might be interrupting because maybe the person already is saying, okay, now let's move on. And you say, I just want to add, I just want to add to that last point. You might use, I just want to add something. I just want to add something. I just want to add a point. I just want to add my opinion. I just want to add, want to add. So you can use wanna, or wanta. Those are the unstressed sounds. Wanna, wanta. I just wanna. I just want to. I just want to add. I just want to add to that last point before we move on. So, move on is our phrasal verb, meaning continue to the next item. And add to, you add to something. So, the something is that last point. I just want to add to that last point before we move on. How about this? We better move things along. This is a great phrase to have in your vocabulary. You would use this if time is passing quickly and you realize there are many things you need to do and you don't have a lot of time left. Or if you just realize that you've been spending too much time on one topic. So maybe you do have a lot of time left in the meeting, but you're just spending too much time. We'd better move things along. We'd better move things along. We better move things along. So notice how this apostrophe D, which is what? This apostrophe D, weed. What is that? But notice in pronunciation is almost silent. Weed better. Weed, you just have your tongue up for that D sound. Weed better, weed better. But you almost don't hear it at all. Even a native wouldn't hear it. It's just grammatically, you know it's there. And it's not would. And this is why we asked, because the apostrophe D has two separate meanings as a contraction. Would is one of them, but that's not. Imagine is we would better move things along. That's not grammatical. So anyone knows what it is? Not would. Exactly. We had, exactly. We had. You got it. Okay. We had better. Native speakers almost never say we had better. Almost always in any situation, a native speaker would say we'd better move things along. You'd better bring an umbrella. So it's a strong recommendation or strong advice. You better bring sunscreen if you go to the beach. So it's a strong recommendation, strong piece of advice. How about this? Let's push that to the next meeting. Let's push that to the next meeting. So that could be an item on your agenda. For example, that could represent reviewing the report. So let's push reviewing the report to the next meeting. So what does that mean? Any ideas? If you push something to the next meeting, you delay it. Okay, so you're not going to review the report or whatever the action is. You're not going to do that now. You're going to do it at the next meeting. So it's on the agenda, but you're going to postpone it or delay it until the next meeting. Let's push that to the next meeting because maybe you don't have time. Maybe because the person responsible for the meeting is not there. Maybe they're sick or they're in another meeting. So you shouldn't review it without that person. Let's push that to the next meeting. Are you enjoying this lesson? Do you like learning natural phrases? These are the phrases that I use in meetings, that native speakers use in meetings, and now you can use them too. So you're not using direct translations, you're using natural speech. So put yes, yes, yes if you're enjoying this lesson. And of course, like this lesson, subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson as well. And you can get this free speaking guide. I prepared this for you to show you 6 steps on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And I put all my best advice and my best tips in this free guide. You can get it absolutely for free. You can just download it using the link below or just go to my website, jforrestenglish.com. And if you want to keep learning these expressions, if you want more in-depth explanation, and if you want me to review your writing and your speaking and answer any questions you have, you can get that support in the Finally Fluent Academy. So you can find the link for that in the description as well, or just go to my website to learn more. Let's move on. Let's move on to our next expression. Now, before we move on, does anyone want to add anything? See, that's one of the expressions we already covered. So you might use that to ask if there are any questions as well. Before I move on, does anyone want to add anything? Does anyone want to share anything? Does anyone want to raise anything? So you can use it in different forms of speech as well. Okay, how about this? Let's circle back to that later. Let's circle back to that later. Circle back. Okay, so visually imagine we're here right now, and here represents discussing the conference. Now, if we circle back to it, it means we're going to leave the conversation, we're going to discuss other things, and then eventually we will return to that same point. Because a circle, you will get to the same point. Okay, so that's what you can imagine with circle back to that. Let's circle back to that later. Let's circle back to that when Jim arrives. So maybe Jim is the person who knows everything about the conference. So let's circle back to that when Jim arrives, or let's circle back to that later. So it's similar to let's push that, but push that just sounds like we're going to delay it. It sounds more indefinite. You don't know when you will discuss it again. But circle back sounds like more immediate. You will do it in the near future, but you might make the time reference tell you more information. Let's circle back to that next week. So now you know it isn't soon, it's next week. Yeah, and you can think of it as to circle back means return. Yeah, absolutely. Let's discuss that later for sure. Good job. How about this? Online meetings. So which one do you do more of? In-person meetings or online meetings? Probably online meetings. Now, to be fair, you can use all the same vocabulary you just learned in online meetings. But there are certain expressions you wouldn't probably say in in-person meetings because they're related to technology. So this one, I probably wouldn't say this in an in-person meeting, but I often start my calls, my online calls with, "Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?" So notice how that sounds native. "Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?" Sounds pretty fast, doesn't it? Well, we don't want to spend a lot of time on this simple question. You can simply say, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" Okay just means sufficiently. So maybe it's not perfect, but is it enough to understand me without difficulty? Yeah, you can absolutely just say, "Can you hear me?" Thank you for answering. Yes, we can. See, this is probably either a direct translation or just trying to make an everyday expression unnecessarily formal or complicated. No one would say, "Am I audible?" Ever. Not an expression. It sounds unnatural. So I'm glad you shared this because you can remove that from your vocabulary and instead use, "Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" I don't know if you would pause a microphone. You can mute. Mute. So I'm not going to do that now, but if you mute it, it means the microphone is still active, it's still on, but there's no audio. It's not transmitting audio. So if I'm presenting, I don't want to hear other people in the background. So I might say, "Okay, everyone, while I'm presenting, can you just mute your audio to make sure there's no background interference?" All right. How about this? Oh my goodness, this is used so many times. So imagine I start the class and then someone says, "Jennifer, you might be on mute," or "You're on mute. You're on mute." And then all of a sudden because I might see it as a comment or I hear someone and then I check my audio settings and I press unmute because I didn't realize I'm talking, but you can't hear me because I'm on mute. Okay, so notice that preposition on. Okay, so a lot of times people will just say, "You're on mute. You're on mute." You might be on mute means I'm not sure. Maybe it's a problem on my end. Maybe there's a problem with your audio. So it sounds more of of a idea, a guess. You might be, but "you're on mute." That's saying it as a statement. "You're on mute. You're on mute." So hopefully that doesn't happen to you in the middle of a job interview. You've been talking for 3 minutes, and then someone says, "You're on mute." Oh, that's embarrassing. It happens to everyone, though. Yeah, you can say Natalia, you can say put it on mute. So, everyone, I'm going to present now. Please put your microphone on mute. Please put your microphone on mute. You could say that, or please put your audio on mute. You could also use mute as a verb. Please mute your audio. So, in that case, mute is the verb to mute. Please mute your audio. And generally, we use the term audio, not microphone. You can use microphone, but audio is more general. I tend to use mic just because I literally have a microphone. And everyone does have a microphone, but generally we see this more as a microphone, not just talking into the computer, and your computer has the microphone. Yeah. Please, everyone, mute yourself. That's very common. Mute yourself instead of your audio. Please mute your audio. Please mute yourself. That's very common. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. How about this? Let me share my screen. So right now, I don't have any slides, right? So I might be like, okay, everyone, let me just share my screen and then we'll get started. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. So, like, I would just use it in that context that I did. Okay, everyone, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. We'll get started. Now, notice how that let me sounds combined. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. So this is when you want to make your entire screen visible, or it might be just because you want to make something visible on your screen as well. Okay, this one. Give me a second while I pull that up. So again, there's nothing on my screen. And then I can say, give me a second while I pull that up. And okay, so what I just did is to pull something up. This something is usually a document, a report, a presentation. It simply means to make visible on a screen. Okay. So I might tell you, oh, I just went on this really great vacation. Let me pull up some photos. So let me make the photos visible on my device and then I will show them to you. Let me pull up the address. Let me make the address visible on my device. Let me pull up my calendar. Let me make my calendar visible on my device. We don't use it with physical notes, okay? Let me pull up my notepad. We use it to make visible on a device. Now, that device can be a phone, tablet, or computer. All right, give me a second while I pull that up. Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Wait a moment. You might add, please. Please wait a moment while I pull that up. While I pull that up. Let's keep going. So let's say you're in an online meeting, maybe a job interview, an online job interview, and then you're talking, and then you finish talking, and the person says, it looks like we lost you for a second. This means at some point during your what you were just sharing, they couldn't hear you because your connection was gone. Now, they might say for a second, for a minute to let you know about the time period. Okay. So you may say, oh, Jennifer, we lost you. And then I know maybe you can't see me, maybe you can't hear me, or maybe both. So it's not specific. If someone says you're on mute, you can't hear me. Your camera's off, you can't see me. We lost you. It's unclear. It could be audio or visual, but there's some sort of issue. Now, this is generally used to represent the internet connection, but not always. But it's usually, oh, we lost you. Can you check your connection? Or, oh, sorry, my Wi Fi is really slow today. So hopefully you don't have to use that one. Now let's move on to email. So notice I said, let's move on. Let's continue. Does anyone want to add anything before we move on? Okay, let's move on to email. Yeah, it seems we lost you for a minute. Oh, Jennifer, it seems we lost you for a minute. Can you repeat your last point? And then it's like, oh my, what did I just say? Does that ever happen to you? Well, that happens to native speakers all the time. Can you repeat your last point? I don't even know what I just said. That can definitely happen. Okay, let's look at some email. Just following up on this. I send and receive a lot of emails that literally will say, just following up, just following up. And then it might be a dot, 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 because then they look at the last email I said, and maybe the last email is very detailed. I'm asking for their feedback on page 5 of the report. So I don't need to repeat what I just said because it's visible in the email. So I can just write, just following up on this dot, dot, dot. And then when they see it, they'll look at the last thing and then they'll realize, oh, I forgot to reply to that message. So to follow up means to continue a previous conversation. And that's why I said there has to be an email already there. So I sent you an email, I asked for your feedback, and this feedback has a timeline, a deadline, and then a week goes by, maybe 2 days go by, depending on the deadline. And then you don't reply. So I just send you a message, just following up, just following up. Okay. So you can just use following up because that's your phrasal verb, just following up. If you include the noun, which is in this case, this would represent the report, the deadline. You have to use the additional preposition on. So it's to follow up. That's your phrasal verb, follow up. But then you have the additional preposition on to follow up on something. Just following up on this. Just following up on this. Yeah, exactly. To continue the same conversation. So the conversation being about the report or about the deadline. You don't use this if you're starting a new conversation. So if we were previously talking about the report, but now I want to talk about a sales presentation, just totally different, you wouldn't use this because it has to be you already talked about that exact topic. Yeah, so Manuel sends me this email. I just emailed you with the checklist for tomorrow. Have a look. Okay. And a day goes by, 2 days go by, 3 days go by, and Manuel does not get a reply. Then he can send me a message, "Hey Jennifer, just following up, dot, dot, dot." And then I will look below and see his last message. How about this? I wanted to check in on this. I wanted to check in on this. So let's say I give Manuel a task and I want him to review all the reports from 2025. And I give him until the end of the month. Now, maybe a day after I send him a message and say, I wanted to check in on this, it means I want to see how that task is going. I want to ask if he has any questions or if he's having any difficulty or how many he's completed, if he thinks he's going to make the timeline. It's a general phrase, but I want more information on something specific. And that something specific would be obvious. I wanted to check in on this. And then I could ask a direct question. How many reports did you file yesterday? Or how many reports can you file per day? So I might ask something specific. Could you take a look at this when you get a chance? So maybe you send me something like a checklist and then you include this. So, hi, Jennifer, here's the checklist. Could you take a look at this when you get a chance? So, when you get a chance, it sounds like it's not overly urgent because you're saying when I'm free, when I have time, when I'm available. If it were urgent, you would have to let me know it's urgent because when you get a chance sounds very casual. And could you take a look at this? So could is a more polite form of can, although using can is not impolite. Native speakers use it all the time. Could just is more formal. Now, can you take a look? So, take a look. You could also just say, look. Can you look at this? Can you review this? Because in that context, look doesn't mean just look at that bird in the tree. It just means review. So, you would look at it, you would review it. So, in that case, look is being used as review, but you can also use take a look at something. But notice it requires a lot more words because you need your verb take, you need the article a, look at, and then the something. But it is very commonly used. How about this? I'll get back to you on that shortly. Okay, I'll get back to you. So if you get back to someone, it means that you return their email or you return their phone call. You return their WhatsApp message or their text message. So you return a communication, whatever form of communication that is. Now, I'll get back to you. It's using the future simple because I'm stating this as a commitment or a promise. I commit, I promise. I'll get back to you. Now, if you specify the noun, in this case, it's simply that. So let's say it's on the report. So the report would be the noun. If you specify the noun, you need the additional preposition on. So you get back to someone on something. Get is your verb that you conjugate. So in this case, it's in the future simple. And then shortly is just the time reference. You could absolutely be specific. And in many cases, it's helpful to be specific because then the other person won't follow up if they know there's a specific time. So it might be, I'll get back to you on that by Tuesday at 5. Okay, so you can be very specific. I'll get back to you on that by the end of the day. Shortly, what is that? An hour, a day, a week? It's not specific. Yeah, commonly used is also ASAP. ASAP suggests there's some urgency. I'll get back to you on that ASAP. So it doesn't necessarily mean 5 minutes. It could be one day or even 1 week, depending on the severity of the request, how much thought is involved in the request or the reply. But there's definitely urgency in ASAP. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that when I finish with this customer. Exactly. I like that. Shortly isn't as soon as possible. Shortly just means in a short amount of time. As soon as possible adds urgency. Shortly just means not long. But what does that mean? My definition of shortly, it's different from yours. Yeah, absolutely. You can say by Friday. I'll get back to you on that by Friday. Very nice. Ooh, just flagging this for you. Okay. So you might send an email to someone, not because they need to do anything, but you just want them to have the information. So maybe you are a customer service rep and you and a difficult customer went back and forth by email and you resolved the complaint for the customer. Okay. And now you might forward that to someone else and say, just flagging this for you. So basically, you're saying, I'm just sharing this so you have the information. There's not really a specific reason why in that case. I just think you could use the information. So just flagging this for you. Now, you might flag a specific date in a report or in an email or a specific amount in an estimate. You could be general or be specific. And flag means, well, if someone is waving a flag, your attention will go to that. So I want your attention to go to whatever I'm flagging. So you can think of it like highlighting specific information or highlighting an entire report. You want the person to notice it. Now let's move on to status updates. So a status update is one that you could provide or that someone could provide you. We're on track so far. So someone could just simply ask you casually, "Hey, how's the project going?" Or, "Hey, how how are we doing with the deadline?" And you can say, "We're on track so far." So if you're on track, it means you're progressing towards the goal and there are no issues. Okay? So it doesn't mean you've reached the goal. You could be at the beginning stages of a 6-month project. So the goal could be 6 months from now. But if you're on track, it just means everything is going well and there are no issues. And those issues could be delays or those issues could just be general problems. We're on track so far. So to be, this is our verb to be conjugated. We're on track. We're on track so far. So far means until this point. We're on track so far. Yeah, you can think of it as doing well. We're doing well. No problems. You could say we're running a bit behind. So if you're running a bit behind, well, then maybe you're not on track. Because if you're on track, it means you don't have any issues or problems. If you're running behind, well, then you have an issue, you have a problem. Because if you're behind, it means you're supposed to be here with the timeline, with the progress, but you're here. You're behind. Okay. So you have not done as much as you expected or needed to do. We're running a bit behind. Now, notice the verb is run. Now, your verb is conjugated in the present continuous because it's taking place now. Right now, we're running behind. A bit just means a small amount. So, honestly, if someone said this to me, we're running a bit behind, I probably wouldn't be that concerned. Depends on the specific task or the project. But it sounds like there's absolutely the ability to recover and get the project back on track. We're running a bit behind. We've made solid progress this week. Okay, so of course, a solid in terms of a definition is the opposite of a liquid. Okay, but in this case, we've made solid progress this week. Solid means really good. We've made really good progress this week. So, native speakers use this as an adjective. I might say, her work is solid, but she's not a team player. Okay, so if I'm evaluating a coworker or a potential candidate for a promotion, I might say, yeah, her work's solid, but she's not a team player. She has a terrible attitude. Okay, her work's solid. It means her work is really good. Her technical skills are solid. Her technical skills are really good, maybe even great. So solid is a positive adjective. So if you say we've made solid progress this week, it means you've made really good progress. Yeah, you can think of it as significant progress. We don't use the adjective big to describe progress. You can say good progress, significant progress, solid progress, but not big. I'm still working through a couple of issues. Okay, so your boss pops in your office or sends you a message and asks you, how's it going? How's the project going? And you say, I'm still working through a couple of issues. Or maybe there's a bug, an error, and you're in charge of fixing it. I'm still working through a couple of issues. So if you're working through, it means you're trying to fix. You're trying to complete. You're trying to understand. So in this case, you might not even know how to fix the problem. That's why you're working through it. You're maybe going through a process of trial and error. You try something, you see how it works. And then if you don't get the result, you adjust and you try again. So that could be to work through. I'm still working through a couple of issues. So it means that the project or whatever it is, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. It looks like we'll make the deadline. So, again, with a status update, how's everything going? How are we doing on the project? It looks like we'll make the deadline. Oh, that's excellent. I'll share that with the client. Okay, so this is good news. You always want to report good news when possible. It looks like this is not 100% fact. So it's still possible that you won't make the deadline. And if you make the deadline, it means you achieve the deadline. So let's say the deadline is April 15th, submit marketing campaign to client. Well, then April 15th, you submit the marketing campaign. If you submit it on April 16th, you missed the deadline. You didn't make the deadline because the deadline was April 15th. If you submit it on April 14th, you made the deadline because the deadline's 15th. So you made the deadline. So it's like saying, I think, it looks like, not guaranteed. If you wanted to sound guaranteed, you would say, we'll definitely make the deadline. We'll absolutely make the deadline, or simply will make the deadline. You would just put it in the future simple. We will make the deadline. We'll make the deadline. And you can use absolutely or definitely to sound very strong. You can use we're on track to make the deadline. So remember we talked about on track? So everything's on track. I don't remember the exact example sentence, but we're on track. The project's on track. You can say we're on track to make the deadline, which means at this point there are no issues, there are no problems, and your progress is going towards the deadline. Just like if a train is on the tracks, well, the train's just going to keep going and reach the destination. So you can absolutely say that as well. Yeah, you can say, we will surely make the deadline. You can say that. I don't think that deadline is doable. So hopefully you would share this as the deadline is being discussed or as someone just gave you a deadline. So, hey, Jennifer, you need to provide that marketing campaign to the client by April 15th. And then you say, I don't think that deadline is doable. So you don't think, okay, so you're making it negative. So to be doable, doable means achievable. So able to achieve. So it's like saying, I don't think we'll make that deadline. I don't think the deadline is realistic because it's tomorrow. How can I make a marketing campaign in one day? That's not doable. That's not achievable. That's not realistic. You could absolutely say feasible. That's not feasible. I don't think that deadline is feasible. And maybe you would suggest an alternative. We need at least 1 week to create a marketing campaign. We're on a pretty tight timeline. Okay. We're on a pretty tight timeline. So maybe you would share this to your team. You might say, "Okay, everyone, we were just assigned a new marketing campaign. It's a pretty important client, so we want to do a great job, of course. And I'll let you know we're on a pretty tight timeline." So this is you letting your staff know, letting your team know, or your boss letting you know that the timeline is aggressive. It's achievable, but it's going to require your absolute best work, your best focus. You're not going to take a long lunch this week, that's for sure. You're not going to do unnecessary administrative tasks. If you work really hard on this project, you can achieve it. But if you get distracted, if you take a day off, if you go on a long lunch, you might not achieve it. Okay. So we're on a pretty tight timeline. So there's no time to waste. But it's not the same as saying, I don't think that deadline is doable. Now, maybe when I share the tight timeline, someone replies back and says, "Hey, Jennifer, I don't think that deadline is doable." And maybe I would push back and say, "Absolutely, it is. If you concentrate and if you don't get distracted, if you do your best work, it's doable, it's achievable, but we're on a pretty tight timeline." So notice the adjective is tight. Tight. We don't use, so tight is like this, okay? But the opposite would be loose. So I might say this shirt is tight. This shirt is loose. Okay, but we don't use we're on a loose timeline. We don't generally use that opposite for the adjective, but tight timeline is very commonly used. And yeah, every minute counts. You might even say every second counts. Okay, or maybe someone asks you, "Oh, so how's the project going? How's that marketing campaign going? Are we going to meet the deadline?" And you can say, "I'll have it ready by end of day." By end of day. Okay, in this case, end of day is more of an expression because if you use this just in everyday speech, you might say the end of the day. Okay? I'll do that at the end of the day. But in this case, end of day is a business timeline. End of day, end of day. Some people even turn this in an acronym, and you'll get an email like this. We need the report by EOD. Okay, so you'll even see this used as an acronym. By EOD, by end of day. Now, end of day is the end of your workday. If your company generally the end of the day is 5 p.m., well, then that's when they need it. If it's 4 p.m., well, then that's the deadline. If it's 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whatever it is, that's the deadline. Okay, and that's why we have by, because you use by and then specific time. By 5 p.m., by Friday, by the weekend, by end of day, by EOD. How about this? Any chance we can push this back until next week? So maybe someone asks, any chance we can push this back? So push this back. We already talked about that. Postpone. Push this back until next week. So it's certainly acceptable to ask for an extension, maybe because you're working on another deadline or it's just not doable. If you use the, you would say the end of the day. Okay? The end of the day. Yes, that is the time reference. End of day is a business time reference. Okay. And it's just EOD. You don't use the with it. The general time reference is the end of the day. How about this? This request is time sensitive. Okay. This is commonly used by people when giving a deadline or even just sending an email. You can include this. This request is time sensitive. So maybe someone requests updated financials for the last quarter or updated financials for a specific project, or they want your what's on your plan, your work plan for the specific project, and they're saying this request to provide that information is time sensitive, which means there if we don't get it by a specific time, we don't need the information because maybe the CEO is presenting to the board at 3 p.m. So if you reply back to that email at 4 p.m., don't even bother because I don't need that information. I only needed it for that 3 p.m. meeting. So it's not that necessarily like it's just an arbitrary deadline. It's that the information isn't needed at a later time because the opportunity has passed. So this request is time sensitive. That's a pretty common thing to include in an email. Okay, let's talk about your workload. You can say, I'm a bit swamped right now. So maybe a friend asks you to go for a walk at lunch or leave early to do something. And you say, oh, sorry, I'm a bit swamped right now. So to be swamped, and then a bit, you're modifying it, you're reducing it. So you're making it sound less severe. I'm a bit swamped right now. So it's like saying, I'm a little busy right now. Oh, this is a good example for the last one. This tax return request is time sensitive because you need to be time sensitive. Exactly. I've got a lot on my plate at the moment. I got a lot on my plate at the moment. Okay, so this is an idiom that simply means I have a lot of different tasks. So if you have a lot of different tasks, most likely you're busy. So you can just think of it as I'm busy. But to have a lot on one's plate. So you might say, my team has a lot on their plate, or Sarah has a lot on her plate at the moment. So, not tired, it simply means busy. Or you can use, it's been pretty hectic today. Whew. So, hectic is just an alternative to busy. Now, if things are hectic, it sounds like, well, it sounds similar to busy, but just maybe there were a lot of requests or a lot of different people. And from start to finish, there was just you're working on one thing, then you're working on another, then you're doing this, then you're talking to this person and doing that. So just boom, 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 boom. It's been pretty hectic today. Hectic today. So we generally use hectic when there's many different tasks. Rather than you can be busy just working on one task. And you can work on that one task from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I probably wouldn't use hectic. I would probably use hectic if it was just many different tasks. I'm juggling a few things right now. Okay. So I'm juggling. This is used idiomatically. It means you're completing different tasks at the same time. And getting those things done at the same time is challenging. Okay. If it were easy, you wouldn't use juggling. You would use juggling to suggest that there's difficulty involved in managing these different tasks at the same time. Now, here it gives an idea of how many, a few, but a few, it's not specific. It means a small amount of. Could be three, could be five. I'm juggling a few things right now. You might say, I'm juggling a few deadlines. I'm juggling 3 deadlines right now. You could use that as well. I'm stretched a bit thin this week. Okay, so if you're this means stretch. So if this shirt is too tight, I might try to stretch it, make it bigger. So if you're stretched thin, it means that every every time slot in your day is occupied. So you have many, many tasks to do, and your ability to do other tasks is very limited. So I'm stretched a bit thin this week. So if someone asks you for a non urgent request, this could be your way of saying, "Oh, sorry, I'm already stretched a bit thin this week." It sounds like your schedule is already very busy. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate that. It certainly helps the channel keep going with free lessons for everyone. How about this? Things are a little crazy at the moment. So you can think of crazy as busy. Things are a little busy at the moment. So maybe there are many different things happening. So things are a little crazy at the moment. Native speakers commonly use this one. Now let's look at some greetings you can use at work. How's everything going today? Okay, so how's everything going today? I'm not asking how you are. Everything could represent the projects you're working on, the work you're doing. How's everything going today? How's everything going today? And then you might say, "Oh, I'm stretched a little thin today, to be honest. Do you have time to help out with a few things?" You can ask, how's everything on your end? So if you're in an office, you're all working towards the same goal generally, but everyone has different roles. So maybe my role on the project, it's actually, I don't have a lot to do. But I want to know, well, what about your role, your tasks, your responsibilities? So that's your end, your end. There's my responsibilities with the project, and then there's your responsibilities. So your end. How's everything on your end? Oh, well, actually, we're dealing with some bugs right now. And then you can talk about whatever issues you're having. How's your day been so far? So this is a more general one because in the first two they're definitely asking about your work or your projects, your assignments, but this how's your day been so far? I'm just asking a general question. So you could answer about you just personally, or you could talk about your work, you could talk about your deadlines. It's more open-ended. How's your day been so far? Now, some small talk phrases. You might say, "Did you see we finally got the new printer?" So, if you're just passing by someone in the office, maybe you don't know them very well and you want to say something, but you're not really sure what to say, you can just make a general comment. "Did you see we finally got the new printer?" And it's just something now you can discuss. It's an unimportant topic, but it allows you to at least talk to that person when you're not sure what to say to that person. Or you might ask, have you checked out the new cafe yet? So again, this is just a general thing. If you work in the same office and there is a new cafe just one block over, well, chances are many people from that office go to that cafe or know there's a new cafe. So you can ask them, have you checked out? Now, if you check it out, it means that you go there, you order, you see what it looks like. Have you checked out the new cafe yet? So maybe you're in an elevator with someone and it's kind of like awkward. You don't really know what to say. Well, you can just make a general comment like this. Are you watching the game tonight? So this would be specific to the events taking place at that time and also the person's interest. If you know the person is a sports fan, then you may ask this question, even if you don't like sports. Again, it could just be a way to have a quick conversation before a meeting starts, or as you're waiting in line at the cafeteria, or as you're in the elevator together. Are you watching the game tonight? Any plans for the weekend? This is a general one. And even if it's on a Wednesday, you can still ask them about the weekend. Maybe not on the Monday. Monday, Tuesday, you might ask about the weekend that just happened. Wednesday forward, you can ask them about the following weekend. Any plans for the weekend? Notice I just dropped the do you. Do you have? Just starting with any. It's the short form. Any plans for the weekend? And then that's the end of our lesson. And yes, you'll be able to watch this content later. So you can just go onto my YouTube channel and there's a section for all the live lessons. And remember, you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. So you can download this from my website. You can find the link in the description or just go to jforestenglish.com. And thank you so much for your support. That will help me keep making these free lessons available for you. And if you want to keep learning natural expressions, if you want my personalized support, if you want me to help you make sure your writing's correct, your grammar's correct, your vocabulary is correct, your pronunciation is correct, everything you need to feel confident, to sound fluent, you can get that support in the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program. You can find the link in the description or just go to my website as well. And that's our class today, everyone. So again, make sure you like this lesson, subscribe so you're notified every time I go live. I had to change the time for this class because I had a scheduling conflict. However, I will go live at the usual time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern time next week. But when you subscribe, you'll get notified of the time I go live. So just make sure you subscribe as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I'm so glad you enjoyed the lesson, and I will definitely see you next time. It was so much fun. Bye, everyone.